it wasn't until like my wife was 5 months pregnant that we actually found out. Yeah, 4 months to put everything together. We were living in a 4 flight walk up. So it was like, okay, let's get a new apartment. Let's, start thinking about baby proofing and what it's going to look like for our budget. All of that was on my mind and was just figuring out like, okay, we got to get things right. As a parent, you're always kind of looking for, I don't want to say that next thing, but like you're looking for that sense of stability, right? Because it's like when it's just you, or it's just you and another person, you could kind of just figure it out. But now it's like when you have a whole other being to take care of, everything's got to be on point. Otherwise, the whole ship is going to sink.
Stefan,
Oh,
welcome to Choosing Possible.
hey, Asha, thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to this. Really enjoyed our last conversation together. So really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's part catch up, part, having an episode.
Yeah.
So let's start off with the question I ask everybody. What is one thing that at some point felt impossible for you and now is your new normal?
Uh, I remember this was probably in May or June of 2023, finding out that I was going to be a father and just thinking like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Am I going to be, good father? I'm going to be able to balance it all. And now it's become something that's obviously, second place. And I think that as long as your love and desire for your child is strong enough, just makes the why stronger and just makes the process not necessarily easier, but you can kind of just push through with it and just make it work. So
So walk me through that. You find out you're gonna be a father. Like what's happening? What's going on in your mind?
uh I was like, well, one, I don't know if the universe selected the right person. But then, two, it was like, all right, well, we got a lot of growing up to do, you know, like not only growing up, but it was like realizing that we had 4 months to get everything ready. By the way, this story is quite interesting. So it wasn't until like my wife was 5 months pregnant that we actually found out.
Oh.
So, right. So now it's like, oh, yeah, 4 months to put everything together. We were living in a 4 flight walk up. So 4 flights of stairs when you're a couple of months pregnant is not easy. So it was like, okay, let's get a new apartment. Let's, start thinking about baby proofing and what it's going to look like for our budget in regards to Pampers and food. And so all of that was on my mind and was just figuring out like, okay, we got to get things right financially. So there's just so many things that pop into your mind. And I think as a parent, you're always kind of looking for, I don't want to say that next thing, but like you're looking for that sense of stability, right? Because it's like when it's just you, or it's just you and another person, you could kind of just figure it out. But now it's like when you have a whole other being to take care of, like your budget's got to be on point, everything's got to be on point. Otherwise, the whole like ship is gonna sink. So that's. I know it seems like a lot popped into my head then, but a lot popped into my head at that moment.
I can imagine, especially 4 months. That's way less than half the time than like
Mhm.
most parents have, even to mentally prepare for that. Not even talking about all the things that you have to set in place
Mhm.
and think about. And it's not like, oh, you have these 4 months and then you can like rest.
Mhm.
That's when it starts.
No. Yep. And then like now she's two, so it's like The terrible two stage is a real thing. If you've ever doubted it, it's a real thing. And like, she's gonna be 3 in like 2 weeks. Oh, not 2 weeks. 2 months. So she's getting every last bit of her two, like her terrible twos out of her. Like she'll go pick up something she's not supposed to pick up, and when you go to get it from her, she'll drop it and run away, and so it's stuff like that. But again, she's 2 years old and curious and learning herself. So I'm not stressing it too much, but it's just like it's just trying to adapt to this whole personality, this new person, because it's like pretty much from the beginning of birth up until like 1, even 1.5, there's no real communication going on other than, a few smiles, obviously nonverbal, but now a personality is developing, a brain is developing. And so, objections like you say no and all that comes with the development of this personality.
That's very interesting. And it's also something that I think finding that balance where, because like you hear all these stories of like parents either being like controlling or things like that, kind of finding that balance where you allow the kid to be or become their authentic self, but at the same time there's certain things that you need to like teach or put in place, and like finding
Mhm.
balance between those. It's like, what are some of the things that you have identified in her personality that are like coming out?
Well, one, her sense of humor is is one. Like I'm trying to pick up on whose sense of humor it is, but it's like, is it mine? Is it my wife's? But no, she is like super funny. Like I'm trying to find like an example, but like even like I think it was like a couple days ago where she has a song that she hears that goes Johnny Johnny, right? And so the response is yes, Papa. And then you say eating chocolate, no, Papa. And then you're like telling lies, no, Papa. And then the next thing is open your mouth, ha ha ha. Right. So now I kind of changed it up and I said her name, and then she was like, yes, Papa. And I'm like eating fries because she was eating some fries from this store. And she was like with mouth stuff, she's like, no, Papa. Right. And so it's just like, it's just hilarious how just watching that personality develop. So her sense of humor is one. Um, her, and I think this is all kids, but I think that desire to be independent and do things for herself. Like it was last Father's Day actually. We were climbing the stairs and she wanted to climb the stairs herself. So, we're just staying close and we're telling her just hold the rail, climb the stairs. She gets to the top of the stairs and then she says, I'm so proud of myself. And so I was just like, wow, like I was really shocked that those words came out of her mouth and that full sentence came out of her mouth. And it was definitely touching as well. Um, made me, quite happy to just see that she was happy and then proud of herself. So, so I was watching that, like her independence, her sense of humor, and there's just so many facets of her that are coming out that I see each and every day.
I'm curious, where did the question of "Am I going to be a good father" like came from, or do you think it's like a common question that happens, or like what was the kind of the experience there?
That's a really good question. I think about like my dad. When it was like 1992, 93, he moved to New York. Kind of figuring that he would be able to make things a better living for all of us. And so I think it was just trying to adapt. But I remember thinking that like, he tried to create a better life for us in that sense. And I think I started wondering like, okay, would I be able to do the same because one, I felt like he, and this is not to speak pejoratively about my father at all, but I felt like he fell short of that, in the sense that, he tried his hardest. But I think there was a point where I felt like it would have been better if he was there with us going through whatever we were going through, instead of him having to move 2,000 miles away to try to rectify this scenario. And so I was just like, okay, I don't want to be that dad that is not there, right? And like I want my daughter to feel like my presence. So I think that was one of the major conflicts that I had. And so for me, I think that was kind of the root of me asking, okay, am I going to be a good father? And I think just at a deeper level is just like, I think every dad that cares, um, wants to be a good father. Like you want to make sure you're not spoiling the child, but then also you want to make sure you have this balance where, they can come and tell you anything, and they feel like they have fun in your presence and they love to be around you. So I think that's where that kind of stemmed from. But just thinking about like, all right, I want to be the dad that's there, the dad that's present, that's helping her out, that's making sure that she has what she needs. So, and again, not this is me not speaking negatively about my dad, but I think he just didn't have the resources, whether that is financial or just the knowledge of how to really sufficiently take care of us at that time. This was early '90s, so I don't know. I mean, I think he tried and did the best that he could.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because I think, well, one, how present of a parent would you be if you didn't experience him not being present is one question. It's
Mm,
kind of like using that experience as a lesson, and
mhm,
then you take it on board with like your experience of parenthood. But also I think I had this interesting kind of realization with some of the conversations that I have had with like my parents or like my grandparents, even understanding the life they lived, the stress they had, the pressure or the limitations that came just with the lifestyle or the environment that they were in.
mhm,
I feel like it helps to have more of that maybe compassion and understanding and being that like they did the best that they could, and insert like I think in any parent will fall short in something. Like we
mhm.
all
Yeah.
as kids we all have something where like, oh, I wish, and we see all those things, but it's kind of that's our opportunity to learn and then take
Mhm,
it on with us as we move. And it's kind of the way I look at it is
mhm,
going from generation to generation where we learn one from what they did right, because that's another thing that
mhm,
when when I called each of my parents to thank them for everything
mhm,
that they have done for us, I hadn't taken a step back to be like, what did they do right?
mhm,
Because because a lot
yeah.
of times we can get so focused on what we didn't get or what was
Mhm,
not there, and there was something in that in those conversations that I was thinking like they did so many things right,
mhm,
and they raised like three independent
mhm,
like people that are contributing members of society. Like they did a lot of things right,
mhm,
and I find it very kind of interesting to even like hear about their experience. Like how was it to have kids, or like whatever age you had them, like what was the experience, or how did you figure it out? And I think through that it's kind of one, it gives it gives a chance to connect, but also like you learn from those lessons and you can give like or have compassion towards them. And I feel like through that for me has like I have experienced a lot of forgiveness, because like through the more you understand, it's kind of like it's hard to judge what you understand.
mhm.
Once
Right.
you
Right.
understand, you're like, oh, makes sense. Like there's nothing to judge. You can only have compassion and understanding,
Mhm,
and then learn lessons. But also it's kind of like that chance for them to express some of their like worries or concerns of some things that they thought that they did wrong that maybe weren't
mhm,
the case. But that's a very, very interesting of like, I'm not a parent myself, so I'm
Mhm.
kind of like, it's very interesting to hear your experience. Um, with the better, or like, what how do you know what kind of life you want to provide, or what you want to create, especially in this day and age when
Mhm.
everything is changing all
Yeah.
the time? I think there's more uncertainty than ever with a lot of things, especially in regards to future.
Mhm. It's interesting because, when I left Barbados, I was 15 years old, right? And moved to New York City. And I imagine I now think about you. I think you're causing me to think about if I'd raised my child in different countries, what my expectation would be, right?
Mm.
Because living in New York City and the demands of capitalism on society is really tough, right? And especially, I mean, my goodness, the price of baby products in America is insane, right? From formula to diapers to, you name it, is super expensive. And it's just a manipulation or taking advantage of these parents because you know that they need these things. So, hey, I can make this amount of money from these products. So then it's like living in New York City, that pressure to kind of be ahead and just like keep up. I mean, I think in New York City is not only just keeping up with the Joneses, but like trying to excel because it's
Mhm.
just like in New York City, there's just so much going on that like you can't just kind of just skate by or just get by. Like you need
Yeah.
to kind of excel, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, whereas I think now if we were back in Barbados or back in the Caribbean, not saying that there wouldn't be some ambition to, do better and to build, some greater life based on some type of financial stability or situation. But I think the goal would be more on ensuring that the entire family unit was happy. The entire family unit felt included and heard. And I know that in regardless of what time it is or where I am, I know that the number one thing is I want her to be happy, right? Or I
Mhm.
want my family to be happy. And I think that so often we are so okay and comfortable with the idea of struggle, right, as a way to get to another level. And I think in New York is probably more celebrated, more so. And then at another level, than being a person of color, being a black man in America too. So it's like, okay, like you hear a lot of black Americans say, "Oh, I got it out the mud," right? Like I came from the projects or I came from being homeless or whatever it is. So there's always that like fear of, being behind. And I
Mm.
remember hearing Will Smith, who I think his net worth has to be somewhere at least around 500 million by now. And, Will Smith said that he still functions like he's a poor person, right? He still thinks like he's a poor person because that fear of ever losing it all ever again is there, right? So I think for me, it's just that desire for them to have a comfortable and fun and happy life. I think it's not it's not fun trying to figure out like, hey, how am I going to pay the next bill, right? Or how am I going to, feed my child this day or whatever it is. Like those are struggles that are create more stress. They create more systemic problems as time goes on. And I see that happen here probably more than I've seen in any other place. But so I think that's where that idea of like what is a good life or am I going to be a good father? Like those thoughts come from.
How do you how do you navigate it all? Because I think I have had so many conversations, I feel like, with men about mental health, and especially like being somebody who is like high achieving, high performer, ambitious, where I feel like it's I can't even imagine like living in New York, which is kind of like the epicenter of being the like push, 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 always
Mhm.
like chase, always achieve, where it's I can't imagine it being highly healthy.
Mhm.
for your nervous system, your mental health in general, just living that lifestyle.
Mhm.
Even though I can relate to that mindset since I'm also like very like driven, ambitious, and all those things.
Mhm.
But like, how do you find that balance of like pursuing or maybe like bridging that gap with like where you are, where you want to be, without kind of like losing yourself or
Mhm.
your sanity or mental health in between?
Well, we're assuming that I haven't lost my sanity as yet, but no, I'm kidding. But it's true. Like I have a client or had a client who she's from America, but her husband is from Croatia, and so he's actually been living in New York for about 3 years now. And she's a go getter. She's working a job that's paying six figures, right? She's making a lot of money, and for him where he's from in Croatia. It's just a very like laid back, like people are not trying to make a certain amount of money. Everybody's trying to be chill. And I think for her, she was trying to kind of like push him to be a little bit more ambitious in that regards. And I think it was a lot for him to deal with. Um, and so I remember saying to her, like, I think for most foreigners, if you move to New York, like I think you need some type of therapy before moving to New York City because you have to figure out how to handle the demands and like even everything from even just owning a car in New York City. Like you could park somewhere and maybe it's not the right spot and now you've got a ticket or you might be driving through a school zone at a certain speed and that's a ticket and all these issues. Insurance, car insurance is ridiculous, especially if you're like leasing a vehicle or financing it. So for me, the way that I tend to balance things out is I look at how the importance of my relationships as paramount to anything else, right? To making money, to succeeding with my podcast and all that kind of stuff. And I for me, I put everything aside. Like sometimes I'm spending time with my daughter, and I might be just sitting with her. But then I do catch myself editing video, right? Like I'm sitting down with her editing video, and sometimes I'm editing on my phone, and then she'll start pulling the phone away from me, right? And then I'm like, you know what? Okay, like, yes, like we're here, we're in this moment. Let's spend this time together, right? And so for me, it's just coming back to that, like, why? And I'm doing this for them. So why is it that if I'm doing it for them, I'm now kind of negating that attention and that love and that experience in that moment? So uh, that familiar relationship, those friendships, that experience is what orients me in a sense and keeps me from losing my mind, I guess, totally. So so that's what I kind of lean into.
How Where is that realization of the importance of relationships coming from?
I think for me, it's always been a major value of mine. I would even go back as far as a child, and this I'm maybe psychoanalyzing myself right now, but like I remember thinking about when I would watch movies and there was one character that was being disadvantaged by another and thinking, well, that's not cool. And I kind of want to see that person as being picked on or being, mistreated, kind of win in that situation. And so, you always wanted to be that person that is a good friend, right? And that person that when you come into the situation, you immediately improve the situation. So for me, it was always about, having strong relationships and it's interesting because I've had pretty good relationships up until now. I would say that I have a much smaller circle now for whatever reason it is. On one podcast when I was speaking to Julia, I was telling her about how I'm kind of building community with a different group of people now because There's just certain groups of people that, may see you a certain way, and you're just like, okay, that's not the energy that I'm trying to work with. So yeah, that value for relationships, I think, has always been there. And, it's also kind of important as well in the space that we work in. We're always networking some way. I'm always emailing somebody, texting somebody, or so that's always been a rather high value of mine.
The follow-up there, this is something that I have been thinking about, finding that. Well, actually, before that, I'm curious, on your answer to this, because I recently sent it out to a couple of people, the question of, like, why do you think we connect, or what contributes to actually connecting, kind of feeling that sense of like connection?
Hmm. I just think that we are at our very core, we're social beings. I think that there's this synchronicity to life. Like, you look at the human body, um, every single part from the intestines to the esophageal part of the body to the skin to the brain to the eyes, everything is connected in some way. Like, recently on a podcast, I had Dr. Eugene Antonucci on, who is a well-known dentist, but then more than that, he's a holistic coach as well. And so he's written a couple of books on just that overall interconnectivity of it all, right? Like finding out that like oral health, like a poor oral health could lead to bad health overall, right? So I think that just where that our being is, we're just there is that synchronicity in our being that just runs through all of us, and that desire to connect is always there. And I'm not even sure where it comes from, right? Like, let's say you're walking through town, and from a guy's perspective, you see a attractive young lady or whatever, and for some reason there's something that's telling you, hey, I need to be connected to that person in what in whatever shape or form, whether that's spiritually, mentally, but you feel that instant connection. So there's something about the way that the universe is wired that we need to feel connected to others in different ways. For me, uh, I just because of my religious background, I do believe that God um, is the one that wired us that way to connect with others, and I think that's the case because I think God Himself is a series of connections, right? Is God the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and there's the Godhead is in a weird sense is like a community where there's these three people working together and in sync. So I think that even at that very structural, foundational level, that God created the world this way based on the way that the Godhead themselves operates. So.
So to kind of add layer to that,
Mhm.
kind of where I got, or how I got to that question, was I was thinking about this self-development, becoming your over-optimized version of yourself.
Mhm.
How a lot of people, the more they become, the more they develop themselves, the better they get. It's kind of like you start to feel lonelier. One
Mm.
part of it is outgrowing people in your life, or kind of having bigger gap. But then the more I was thinking about it, it's kind of like you have this, like we all have this sense of we want to connect, we want to feel connected. But it's almost like you use self development as a way to try to build this kind of perfect version of you, where there's always, oh, I need
Mm.
to work through this before I'm ready to connect, before I'm ready to let somebody close or whatever. It's kind of like you try to use self development as a way to try to get to the point where you're so over optimized that you don't have to be vulnerable to actually let
Mhm.
somebody see the real raw you. And then you see
Right.
two people meet who are two over optimized versions of themselves. They might connect over some, like, not necessarily superficial stuff, but maybe like their interests in like
Mhm.
self-development or some things that I have worked on or things like that, but you don't actually go beneath that. You don't
Mhm.
really step into that vulnerability. And that's where I was thinking about it, where it's kind of like you try to build yourself up to this point where you feel ready to
Mhm.
connect, but really the only way we connect is through that vulnerability and sharing some of the parts of you that are not as perfect or as optimized, just sharing you really, instead of building this kind of like I don't know, some kind of armor of like I'm this better version, and then you feel more
Mhm.
comfortable sharing that, but that's not like the real you
Mhm.
or kind of the essence of you. And that's partly why I was thinking of that, or like that question came from place of like what actually is it that contributes to like in the moment you feel connected, like why is it that like for me kind of the answer that came to me was the vulnerability, because like when you're
Mhm.
vulnerable and that vulnerability is met with that, like it's not even agree disagree, it's just you have this space to just
Mhm.
be the way you are, whatever is the emotion you're feeling or whatever it is that you believe or that you share, just having that space where you're met with that. I
Mhm.
feel like that's where a lot of times a lot of that sense of connection comes from.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because yeah, even as you said with that self development, there's a sense in which you start to kind of pull away from people. And I started thinking to myself, like, if that's what I start doing, have I actually become the person that I want to be?
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, because for me, I know at a deeper level, like, of course, I want to be, you know, wealthier and healthier and all these kind of things. But then more than that, I value, kindness and love and, a person who's merciful, like all these, I would say tenets or facets of grace. These are things that I really value above everything else. So, I think it really takes getting into very deep and dark moments to see whether or not who you're trying to become is who you're really embracing, or is this is just a facade that you put up, as you said, to make people think you're a good person. So it's just interesting when people come to me and say, "Hey, you're a good guy." I'll hear and I'll take the compliment, but you know, there's still that part of me that says, "Okay, like I'm still working on myself. Like there's still stuff that has to be done. Like there's still people that I hate to say it, but there's still people that I don't want to use the word hate, but it's like there's some people you would rather not be around, right?
You know what I
Uh,
usually replace hate with? Dislike
Mhm.
with passion.
mm. That's an interesting way to phrase it. But it's just
Yeah, I heard
like,
somebody say about it, and I'm like, that's way better than hate.
yeah. But it's like you do have those people where you're like, man, I would not want to spend a whole day with this person. Actually, I wouldn't even want to spend 10 minutes with this person.
Yeah.
Right. So um and then there's just a part of you that's like, okay, is that the best part of me? Or is that the worst part of me that's responding right now? And so, these are just like internal challenges that you have where you're trying to get better and grow, but then you're like, something at your core is just pulling you back from keeping you from like getting to that other step.
Yeah, but with this, like, where do you draw the line? Because then it's also like you can go so far into people pleasing that now you neglect your own like wants and needs, where
Right.
you feel like genuinely like this person is not healthy for me.
Right.
And then it like that could be another aspect of even like that identity of being a good person, that you
Mhm.
stay it's not even like it can be anything, uh like intimate relationship, friendships, job, whatever is the environment, you stay
Mhm.
longer than needed because you feel
Right.
that's what a good person is supposed to do, or
Right.
like and it's kind of like how do you find that balance where it's one is, yeah, maybe with certain people putting forward your best self, not best
Mhm.
self, where some people, the way I look at them is they're there to train my patience.
Mm.
It's kind of like I I look at certain people that might be very triggering to me,
Mhm.
and I approach it more from perspective of um, I look at it as my way of training my patience. This is how I
Mm.
can practice regulating myself and reminding myself to be present and kind of also not make it about me and kind of be try to focus on being
Right.
present with the person, especially if it's like family or, like somebody that is like kind of very, very like close.
Mhm.
And then also yeah, it's I feel like a lot of it also is trusting your gut because there's some people that I meet that I'm like, I don't know if I want to spend more time with them.
Mm.
And initially, because I'm a recovering people pleaser, I would be spending time with those people.
Right.
and and I would literally like show up and I'm resenting the whole experience. And it's not because of them. It's because I didn't set the boundary and I didn't
Mm.
respect myself enough to not show up. And I feel like and even like I went as far with my people pleasing that I didn't even consider option to say no. It's kind of like I
Mm.
can't do like it's not allowed for me. Like I'm somebody who is I'm always there for others. I'm always supporting them. I'm a peacemaker. So me saying no, it's kind of like going against all of those things. And it
Mhm.
takes a lot to kind of untangle that and start to trust yourself and be like, is this the best thing for me?
Mm.
Because one thing is that we become super selfish, but also you can become so selfless.
Mhm.
So there's like two
Yeah.
extremes that you can go to.
Yeah, there's always that ability to be in balance in either direction, right? And I think for me, the way that I kind of balance it is like I still see that person that I have a difficult time being around. I'm like, okay, there's 7 billion of us in this planet, and each person plays their part in the wheel, right? And so I'm like, listen, I think I've gone to a point where I've stopped seeing these people as like they're in my life, but I don't necessarily see them as playing a part in how do I phrase that? I don't necessarily see them as in reference to myself, right? Because they exist outside of me, right? Uh, let's say this person, I'm 35, so let's say this person is 42. Like they existed before they had their connections and their experience in the world prior to me. So uh, there's a relevance that they serve to the universe in some way. So for me, it's understanding, okay, I have my relevance as well, and if the universe wills it that we are going to connect on a positive level, then so be it. If we're not able to connect on a positive level, I'm like, hey, you go your way, I go my way. There's no love lost, there's no hard feelings. It's just I wish the best for you. So that's how I kind of balance it out. So, and I've had relationships like that where you had to kind of just let that person be. And sometimes like that's just like at a personal level. But now let's say it comes to professional and you start realizing to a certain extent, and I got to be careful what I say because, I'm still working a 9 to 5, well, a different schedule. But then you get to a point where you start feeling like you outgrow a certain job and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, this job doesn't serve me. And then the people around me, the way that they think as well. Uh, if if you ever happen to be in New York City, you happen to work a city job, you'll understand the type of people that you meet in a city job. It's quite interesting. um, and so you're like, and it's not that I'm saying I'm above anybody else, but
No.
I never want to have that mental processing where I think like, oh, I'm above this situation or I'm above this person. But sometimes you feel like I could be doing a little bit better than this, so sometimes you start to realize like, okay, I need to grow out of this situation and go to something better, especially when you start to internalize your goals a little bit more. Like if your goal is, you know, your family and your family's success, this job that you've gotten so comfortable with, you got to come out of your comfort zone and say, hey, it should be okay to just move on. Like, I think for me, whenever I work in a place, I tend to stay there for a while. Like the job before this one, I was there for like 7 years, and I've gone to a point where I said I have to be comfortable being able to move from job to job, even if that means every year, right? If that means to get into something that brings me a little bit closer to the fulfillment that I'm looking for at a professional level. So yeah, it's as you said, like I think I need to go into therapy for people pleasing because I'm still at that
But
stage
like
of yeah.
it's I think it's a hard one to navigate when you outgrow the group, and it can be whatever group, people, your colleagues, or your work environment, whatever might be the case. Kind of outgrowing that,
Mhm,
and you become aware of that,
mhm,
and you still care for that environment. You care for those people. You like them, but it's kind of like I don't belong anymore.
mhm,
And even like I have had several situations where I think outgrowing in general and developing is a tough one to navigate, because one is sometimes you outgrow where it's clear I have outgrown this environment, this like relationship, whatever, where you just don't align anymore. So with that one, it's like it's very clear that this is not my space anymore. I need to move on.
mhm,
But then there's some where you outgrow, but you're still aligned
mhm,
and you still care, but you know that it's kind of like it's time. This is not my either I'm gonna stay here and start resent this whole setup,
mhm,
or and it's kind of like I wrote down that like outgrowing the comfort, where that
mhm,
comfort that you would get from that place, you now outgrow it, where now it starts to be more painful to be in that environment than
mhm,
facing the uncertainty of the next thing. And I think for me it's been hard to navigate that phase of outgrowing where it's still kind of aligned. You also
mhm.
care, but you know that this is not my space anymore.
Right.
I'm about to step into, I don't even know what the next is. I just know that this is not it anymore.
Mhm. I I love the direction of this conversation because now I'm starting to think about something that happens here in America a lot. And I don't know if you've heard about like the concept of, and especially when it comes to rappers, they'll say things like, okay, as a rapper, do I outgrow the hood? Should I stay in the hood? Right? Because
Mm.
there's always this idea that it's more dangerous for the rapper to stay in his community because there are always rappers who think like, "Hey, I'm gonna stay in my community. I'm gonna help it get better. I'm gonna, push it ahead." And then, unfortunately, it's often been the case where those rappers, while trying to improve their community, oftentimes lose their life, whether that's through, gun violence or some weird situation. And so, obviously, there's some point where I'm pretty sure it came to them where it's like, okay, I want to, I'm doing this because I want to get a better life. But then somewhere along the line, the idea of like improving my community came along. Um, can these two things like, be true for me with me either being in the neighborhood or being out of the neighborhood, right? And there are people who, well, there are rappers who do it successfully. They'll leave their neighborhood, but they'll find ways to give back, whether that's through different events or stuff like that. But you have to know, like, hey, this community is dangerous. It doesn't make sense staying. And it's not that you don't love the community; it's just not a safe community anymore. Like I remember a couple of years ago, the police chief in Los Angeles, he's literally telling people, he's like, "Do not come to LA. We cannot protect you." And this is the police commissioner. And I'm like, if the police commissioners tell you that it's not safe, you probably should stay where you're at. So even stuff like that, that just made me think about that. Where, like, yeah, if you've kind of outgrown that situation, maybe it is time to leave.
But also with this, I think in interesting part of it is that, and And I think that this is where people pleasing can kind of get in your way because you can stay
Uh-huh.
there longer than needed. Well,
Uh-huh.
you being also like me, where I would identify, let's say I'm outgrowing the environment or whatever, and I start to part of the people pleasing. And this was like interesting realization for me. I don't know how many years ago that I realized that I would put other people's wants and needs above my own.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like, oh, whatever is better for this person actually is important than what is important for me. And you kind of start to dismiss yourself. You don't
Uh-huh.
even put yourself in consideration. It's about like what's better for them.
Right.
Where it's kind of like stopping and thinking like what's the best for me. And it's this, and especially if your environment where you you are somebody who is on trajectory or just in general has this pattern to continuously work, develop, improve, which not many people want to do. Not many people want to do it long, consistent, because it is exhausting. Continuously pursuing, chasing, improving, and keep doing that. It is a lot. And a lot of people at some point they're like, you know what? I'm happy where I am. I don't want to keep going with you. And what I would have is I would start to feel guilty for advancing too much because they can't keep up with
Mm.
me. And then I feel like now I need to slow myself down because I don't want to become this arrogant person who is too far ahead and, all these things. But then at the
Mhm.
same time, now I'm neglecting my own journey and
Right.
what is my path. And it would be this like strange journey to go through with letting go, but also realizing that, and this was big lesson that one of my mentors said to me, you can still care from the distance.
Uh-huh.
It's not like you now like, okay, cut off, whatever, and there's this big drama, but it's like you can still care from the distance. And if they want to get on the journey with you, they can, but you just need to be
Uh-huh.
aware of like what is your journey, and not everybody will be on that journey. And it's the same with outgrowing the environment, outgrowing people, even like outgrowing, in some cases it can be outgrowing where you live. Like it's just not the space for you anymore. And it's just something that has been interesting for me to navigate, even to think about, okay, have I done everything I can to support others to kind of be on that path and all that? And also recognizing that it's their decision. It's not my job to
Uh-huh.
drag everybody with me. If they want, they can come. If not, that's completely fine. But I need to go because I need to kind of honor my journey and
Uh-huh.
what is it that's the best for me based on kind of where I am, where I want to go. And and with that, initially I would have like a lot of guilt coming with that.
Uh-huh.
But then at the same time, with time, you start to accept it, and it's like, okay, this is journey, and it's one of the stages you go through. And with each stage, you also start to get in different environment that I would have it where I'm like, oh, I
Uh-huh.
get it. Now I have these people that I'm feeling way more connected with. I feel like they're
What?
getting me more, and it brings more excitement out of me. But if I had stayed in that environment, I'm just kind of looping. And it's not helpful for anybody involved.
Mhm. Right.
Not them, not me.
Yeah, and I'm starting to think, and I love my brother, right? But like, I remember 2020, especially with the pandemic going on, a lot of people in New York City were moving out, and they were moving either down south or different spots throughout the country. And my brother and I, we've done together different like moving jobs. So I told my brother like, hey, like we should probably do a couple of moves because people are moving out of state. And, moves, we've got paid pretty decently for jobs within New York City. So imagine moving someone from like New York to, I don't know, North Carolina or something like that. That's a pretty good paying job. Right. And from that, I wanted us to see if we could kind of pivot into having some type of moving business and maybe even like an app and stuff like that. And he just didn't see it. Like he couldn't really picture it. And I didn't end up doing it. And a part of me was like, I think a part of me, the reason why I didn't do it is because like this is my brother. This is a person that I want to do it with. And now in hindsight, I was just like, man, I should have found somebody else to do this with. And maybe I could have developed a business from there. and maybe I wanted my brother to see what was possible because sometimes you're around other people who kind of get stuck in a mindset and they can't see where you can advance either financially or relationship wise.
Yeah, it's
And
kind of
I
like you need to be the example that shows them, or they
right.
are somebody who believes when they see, and then they might have some ideas, or
Right. And it's funny because I think I've always kind of, in a weird way, I've kind of played that role for my family because I go back to 2007. I was 17 and I became vegan. And so my brother then became vegan after that. I lost about 70 pounds in 2010. Then he lost the weight as well. And the funny thing is that I'm the youngest of the siblings, right? So in a sense, you wouldn't see me as a person who is kind of being that example to the rest of the family because usually you kind of look for somebody who's a little bit older. But yeah, I was kind of like that figure for my family in a sense, and even at a spiritual level too. Like I remember being 15, 16, and presenting and preaching sermons in the church as well. So there was a lot of those dynamics going on at the time, and so it's just like you want to always feel like people are moving along with you, but they're not, and they're just still seeing things the way that they were 10, 20, 30 years ago, and you kind of wanted to see like, hey, you need to move from this, right? Like, and I think not everybody has a visionary perspective. And I think for me, I'm always looking at like, okay, what's the next thing? Right. And I'm always looking like the average person may look at a story a certain way, and I see completely different angles in one story. So it's difficult to kind of navigate reality when you see life in so many different ways, and people see either just a very um, generic way of just seeing things instead of looking deeper into it and seeing what's behind the scenes.
it's been one of the challenging things for me, even like initially with coaching, but even with people in my life where I always see like potential in everybody that I talk to, and all those things. But there's been like couple of like realizations or lessons that I have been learning over the years. One is accepting people as they are and accepting that they might never change
Mhm,
and that it's their journey. It's not my journey. It's not my job to fix them. It's not, I can inspire,
mhm,
I could influence, but it's their life, their decisions. And it's been one of the hardest things, especially with people that you really want to help and you see that they're struggling.
mhm,
And the other thing was that you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped or who doesn't want to help themselves. You just can't. And
mhm,
and that's the it would take me so many years of trying to like just being like very proactive and trying to help but they just don't want to help themselves. So I
mhm,
can try as much as I can, and it's not going to do anything because they're just not in that space where, and some people, and I think that's the hardest thing to accept, they might never get to that space. And kind of separating your role in their lives or responsibility that you might put on yourself from theirs, kind of like that's I like what is the book? uh, I'm blanking on it now, but it was The Courage to Be Disliked. He had
mhm,
this like very interesting kind of concept he was talking there about separating your tasks from other people's tasks. It's like it's my
mhm,
task to express my opinion, but it's not my task to make you feel good. That's your task of kind of like being in control of your emotions. Or what I can control is how I send the message, but
mhm.
I can't control how it's going to make you feel. And
Right.
it's not my responsibility. And it's kind of like separating those. It is a challenge, especially when you like deeply care for others and you want them to live their best lives, be their best selves. And you can always kind of again like care from the distance, but
Mhm.
it's not an easy one. It's easier said than done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
um All right. Before we close out, where can people connect with you, learn about you, find your podcast?
So right now, we are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and recently we were just picked up by Progressive Radio Network. So
Nice.
that is a internet-based radio network. So they air our program every Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, which I imagine is probably 9 p.m. your time. Uh, so if am I correct? Is it a 6 hour difference?
Uh, if it's, I don't know, but usually it's either evening or night around
Right.
9 p.m. onwards, probably somewhere
Oh,
there
okay.
in that window.
Yeah. But yeah, well, we're on all those platforms, and usually when it comes to like Instagram, we're posting teaser clips of the episodes that are going to come out that week. So we air episodes every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and you guys should check it out. We have a lot of great guests that come on. So I think this week we have Danielle Pashko, who's a health expert, and her story is pretty interesting as well. Really love talking to her as well. So that should be pretty fun to look forward to.
Love it. So, last question I have for you. What is the impossible you're chasing now?
The impossible is seeing where this podcast can go, right? And it's being a trainer for the past 6 years, realizing people's relationship with fitness and health, and then seeing particularly Americans' relationship with fitness and health, even though it's getting better, it's still a challenge. And so for me is using this podcast to the point where, we're having more events, like health events. Like one thing that I used to do when I used to work for Chelsea Pears is that we would do nights where we would have people come in and use the in-body scale. And so they could see everything from their body weight to muscle mass to fat percentage to visceral fat. And visceral fat, as you know, is an indicator of, potentially longevity, right? Like if your visceral fat level is anywhere above a 10, that's significantly high above 10, you could be putting yourself at risk for potentially an event that could be heart related or any other type of event. So we try to have those type of events. And then I want to also use a lot of the health centers in my community as a way to provide affordable health care to people within the neighborhood. So that is what I'm chasing. Uh, that is considered as impossible just because of the relationship around health and fitness and the way that people feel about, their life. I've met so many people that feel like, you know, why eat a certain way or why not smoke? I'm going to die anyway. But I want people to realize I can have a certain quality of life that is elevated. It doesn't have to be this way, that the way that most
I think
communities
it's very
see.
hard to communicate it if it's not something you have experienced.
Right. Oh, correct. Correct. Yeah.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
wishing you all the best. Everybody go check out the podcast. It's very, very good. I even was on it.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Definitely check it out. It should be on it again. We'll be
oh yeah, yeah,
connected.
we need to set it up.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for coming on, sharing your wisdom, and I really enjoyed this.
Yes. Thank you so much again, Oscar. Really appreciate this. And yeah, just looking forward to when this comes out.